All yours.
Good morning and wake up, Winchester. My name's Amy Schaffert, and this is another episode of In the Know. Today, I'm really excited to be with Dana Brunn, one of the co-founders of Mountain Patriots, and Robert Gallalee. Robert is here to tell us his story and how he got involved with Mountain Patriots and why this organization is so important. Good morning to you both.
Good
Good
morning,
morning.
Amy.
Thanks for being here, Robert. Would you want to kick us off and kind of tell us your story? Very intriguing story, and actually one of the reasons why I started coming to Mountain Patriots. So let us know about what happened to you on the mountain.
Okay, well, I'll just start by I knew Dana. We had conversations. I knew kind of what he was about, but I just knew him because he'd go walking past my house. We live on the top of a mountain. We're neighbors, but neighbors on the top of the mountain means he's way over there. I don't have a neighbor around me. They're all empty lots. But so anyway, I went to vote in November. I was driving past our voting booth, our polling place, and there was and I could tell there was a vote. I didn't know there was a vote, but I'm like, oh, there's a vote. So I went in to vote and saw Dana there, and he said, hey, we have this meeting that we do, right at a pavilion that we have on Monday nights. You should come check it out. And so I talked to him a little bit about what I was going through with the cow, and I started coming to Mountain Patriots, the following Monday, and so that's how I got involved in the group. So what happened with my cow is I had moved to the top of a mountain in November 2020, or I'm sorry, July 2020, during COVID, with an election upcoming in November, the presidential election, and I was concerned about what was going to happen in that election. I thought if Trump won, people are going to go nuts. They're going to riot. They're going to, burn things down. Who knows if you'd be able to get food? And I thought if Biden won, the economy is going to collapse. The price of everything is going to skyrocket. It's a no-win situation. And so I wanted to move far away from other people and start growing my own food. And so I immediately built a greenhouse. I immediately built a chicken coop, and I figured I could live off lettuce and eggs if that's what it came down to. So anyway, that was July of 2020. And so then the election happened. And, I was deeply concerned about the direction of the country and society. And so I got more serious about, growing my own food and providing for my family. And so the property that I moved to, it was only 1.4 acres, but it had all farming infrastructure already on it. It was decrepit. It wasn't kept up. A lot of it had to be redone, but it had the animal fencing and it had a barn. And so when I bought it, I thought, wow, here's something I can afford, because a farm is beyond a lot of people's reach. Because at this point, even if you get an old rundown house and it's on 5 acres, you're going to pay hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. So an average person can't just go buy a $500,000 farm. So I found this small property that I could afford that was already a farm. And so anyway, we once we got fences rebuilt and the barn rebuilt and stuff like that, we got a milk cow to provide fresh milk, butter, cheese, for the family. And it was really a wonderful experience for somebody to go be able to milk that cow. The kids loved that they could have their cereal. They could go get the milk for their cereal. Nobody had to go to the grocery store. Oh, if you want some milk, well, there's the cow over there. Go get some milk. I got different birds and some goats and things like that. And then it's important to note that all the neighbors in the area that I talked to, they'd say, oh yeah, it's always been a farm. There's always been animals there. And one of the neighbors told me that in 1994 that he had gone to the court proceeding or the hearing or whatever it was, and that he was there when they said, yes, livestock are allowed on this property, even though it's not zoned for livestock. So I didn't think I had any problems. And, you can imagine how much money and effort it goes in to do the fencing and build the infrastructure and make the grass grow. We're on top of a mountain. So I've spent many, many hours digging rocks out of the ground, but I was happy to do it. It was a labor of love. I was doing it for my family and for their health. So anyway, one day I get a letter from the zoning department violating me for having livestock on my property. And I say, well, this must just be a misunderstanding. They must not know that livestock is allowed on this property. So I go down to the zoning department and I say, hey, here's a situation. Maybe you're not aware of it. Maybe you're new. I don't know. But here's a situation. There is this court hearing. I don't know exactly when it was, and they're just like, no, you're not allowed to do that. And so I'm like, well, can we find the paperwork? Can I look through the files and find, from when this happened? No, you can't look through the files. And I'm like, well, are they available online? No. Okay, well, what do we do? So the secretary says, I'll look for the paperwork. So the secretary looked for the paperwork. She found the owner's name at the time on a different document and said, Mr. Gallalee, you're not going to like this. This didn't, this was for a different property and it was denied. And I said, no. I mean, there's no reason for my neighbor to be lying to me about being in the proceeding when the livestock, when the property was given the ability to have livestock on it. So she went back and looked and she found the document. So, so she called me on the phone and said, I found what you're looking for. But it still doesn't apply to what you're doing. I said, well, can I come look at it? She said, sure. So when I arrived to look at the document, the zoning administrator for our county, he comes out and he's literally, first of all, he wears a vest, always, he must spend hours prepping himself to go out in public. He's always very done up. But so he's literally holding the file close to the vest as he's talking to me, explaining to me how you cannot have livestock up there. And so I ask if I can see the document. And so I read the document. I'm like, a livestock violation was overturned. So I can have livestock. He's like, no, you can have horses. And I'm like, I can have as many horses as I want. Yeah. I mean, we have nothing to say about horses. And I say, but it's a livestock violation. It's not a horses violation. And he said, well, that's not how it works. So I didn't have lots of money to pay for a lawyer. So I had to educate myself. And so I did that. And the next thing that I had to do was to appeal the violation to something called the Board of Zoning Appeals. So you have a zoning administrator, and he basically, I mean, he should be following laws, but he basically gets to just make a determination and say you're in violation or you're not. And the check on that power is the Board of Zoning Appeals. And so the Board of Zoning Appeals is a panel of people, just as in 1994, when the property got issued a violation for livestock, it went to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So I said, okay, well, whatever this guy's problem is, I'll take it to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So you have to pay $250. You have to, provide different information on your neighbors and adjoining lots and things like that. So I did all that, and I figured, surely this is just a misunderstanding. And so then I go before the Board of Zoning Appeals. At the time, I didn't understand it, but in that proceeding, in which I was denied, but in that proceeding, the zoning administrator made it very clear to the Board of Zoning Appeals that they are not there to consider the previous Board of Zoning Appeals decision, because of course they don't have the authority to, nor does the zoning administrator. He doesn't have the authority to interpret a previous Board of Zoning Appeals. So I didn't understand it at that time, but later I said, oh, he was instructing them that they could not comment on that previous ruling because they don't have the authority and they're above him. So of course he doesn't have the authority either. So here they are just ignoring a legal precedent that was already set. So I get turned down at the Board of Zoning Appeals. So the next step is you appeal that decision to the circuit court. And I thought, surely the judge in the circuit court, surely he's going to understand that this is ridiculous. They're telling me I can have 1 trillion horses, but I can't have a cow. Obviously, horses or cows doesn't have anything to do with the health, safety, and welfare of the public. There's no difference. The purpose of zoning is health, safety, and welfare. So, hey, now I'll pay more money in order to be able to be heard by the circuit court. So I fill out all of my own paperwork on that. And, I'm feeling really good about it. And so when before I go to the circuit court, the county attorney, he files something called a plea in bar in demur, and it's basically to get the case dismissed. And the reason to have the case dismissed that he stated was because I did not name the local governing body in my suit. So when I wrote my appeal to the circuit court, I did the research and I came across a circuit court clerk's manual. And in that circuit court clerk's manual, it tells you exactly how to write your appeal. It shows you, write this on the document. Naturally, that's what I did. When I took it and I filed it in the circuit court at the circuit court clerk's office, the gentleman who was working there went to the computer and he pulled up the circuit court clerk's manual, printed off the page, brought it and compared it to my appeal and said, well, you followed exactly the instruction. And I said, well, yeah, I did what you did. I found the circuit court clerk's manual. That's how I wrote the appeal. So when I see that the county attorney is trying to have it dismissed based on this, what he was saying was I had to name the local governing body. So instead of writing Robert Gallalee versus Frederick County, Virginia, I was supposed to write Robert Gallalee versus Frederick County, Virginia Board of Supervisors.
Oh my goodness.
But that's not what the court clerk's manual said to do. So I go to court. Surely this is a misunderstanding. I go before the judge and he throws out my case.
Yep.
And, at which point I think this is over. There's nothing I can do. So I was not pleased, and I let the judge know that I was not pleased and that this is ridiculous that somebody could follow the instruction of the court
And
and
still
then
not right.
have their case dismissed. I said, everyone should be ashamed of this. This is outrageous. Well, guess what? They didn't care. The judge could have shown some empathy or sympathy. Said, Mr. Gallalee, I'm really sorry. The person that worked in the clerk's office could have gone, this is outrageous. I'm going to do something about this. But do you think the clerk's office cared?
Nope.
No, they didn't care. The judge didn't care. The county attorney didn't care. Nobody cared. Well, so where it goes from there, that was basically a civil procedure where it went from the zoning administrator to the Board of Zoning Appeals to the circuit court. Now that is exhausted, well, now they charge, now it's like, well, you can comply, Mr. Gallalee. And oh no, I won't comply.
We're following your rules.
And so now it goes to a criminal complaint. Now it's a class U misdemeanor, and the criminal complaint, it only carries a fine. But that fine, if you don't pay it, then they can seize your house. So they try to use it like oh, it's just a fine. All you have to do is comply. But in reality, if you don't comply, then they will make you homeless. So you just think, if you're empathetic, think of the weight of that. If you do not do what we say, even though we're wrong, we're going to put your house, your family on the street.
So
That's what these
Robert,
people are willing to do. Yeah.
now that you've gone through this, and in the beginning you were saying, okay, I think that this is just a misunderstanding, but now that you've gone through this, what is your perspective of local government and how they view the people and the rights of the people?
Well, so I have to go a little bit further in the story, which this is still ongoing. But so now I
Right.
get the criminal complaint. Now I go before the district court, and I'm thinking, surely this is a misunderstanding. Surely the district, because I never got heard in the circuit court, they just threw it out because of
Right.
paperwork. Surely. And so Mountain Patriots, our group, 13 people showed up at my court case. Now, when I wrote my appeal on the circuit court side, some of my reasons for appeal were that the county was not following their own law that they made, and that there was constitutional issues with what they were doing to me. So I thought, so I was representing myself, and we go into the district court, and interestingly, there's all these top lawyers for Frederick County and in the state of Virginia, and they're in the courtroom for my silly little zoning case. And it's, that was very interesting. And also, it wasn't a public court proceeding. It was tucked off in an office in the back. So anyway, so in that case, I present my constitutional arguments to that judge. One of them being that the zoning administrator, basically the way, according to the Constitution, that the government is supposed to work. We also have something in the state of Virginia called the Dillon Rule. And according to both of those, the government does not have authority that is not expressly granted to it. In other words, the government can't just say, you're in violation of the law. And you say, what law? They said, well, we just decided that you are. That would be ridiculous. But so in the Constitution, they say the government does not have authority that's not expressly granted to it. And so to the judge, I said in court that they don't have the authority to interpret or overrule a previous Board of Zoning Appeals decision. The zoning administrator, nowhere does he have that authority. The Board of Zoning Appeals also does not have that authority. They aren't following procedure. My other constitutional argument was my 14th Amendment right to face my accuser. Well, the people that file these zoning complaints, they get to remain anonymous. And so I said to the judge, you should dismiss this case because they're refusing to let me face my accuser. I don't know if my accuser is looking at my mixed race family and saying, oh, we don't like that. And that's why they called in the complaint. I don't know if my accuser is somebody that doesn't even live anywhere near me. I don't know any of these things. I should be able to cross-examine my accuser. And the judge's answer to that was, well, in child abuse cases, the perpetrator doesn't have the right to face his accuser, which is, of course, a child, right? So we're not going to put the child on the stand and let the person that abused them cross-examine them.
Of course.
Makes sense. I can accept that. We should amend the Bill of Rights instead of just ignoring the Bill of Rights. So what this situation showed me is that my local government, including the zoning administrator, the county attorney, all the people in the Department of Planning and Development, because I spoke to them all, none of them care about my constitutional rights, nor do they care that they themselves follow their own law that they wrote. They don't even care about that. And then to go before a judge and see that the district court judge, he could also care less that they don't have the statutory authority to do what they're doing, and he could care less that my constitutional rights are being violated. And so for me, it was like, wow, look where we are. I mean,
Yeah.
does your average American think that
No.
they're protected at least by the Constitution? Do Americans think they're protected by the Constitution? I would say absolutely they think they're
And they
protected
don't
by
know
the
the
Constitution.
Constitution, do they, Rob? And you've already, as we have, gone all through the Constitution to figure out and use the Constitution, which protects our rights, and nobody follows it.
They don't care. I
They
mean,
don't care.
they just don't care.
So what do you think the root of this is? Like, why do you think that they're refusing? Because you've come with logic, you've come with the law, you've come with a very solid argument. Why do you think they're still refusing to acknowledge that?
On the judicial side, I think it's pretty simple that we think that the judicial is a separate branch from the legislative. So this local government would be legislative branch, even though they can't legislate. But so we would think that they'd be separate, but no, really, the judicial side is firmly on the side of the
Absolutely.
government. And that doesn't matter if you're at the state level, federal level, or are just small little county.
Right.
The judicial is there to protect whatever the government does, even if they're wrong. On the county side of it, these county bureaucrats that are doing this, I think for them, it's just that they are, how do you say, that they are controlled by their ego, that they, for whatever reason, they get into this government system and now they just want to be all powerful, and they think that, you know, they don't want anything to question their authority. So
Right.
in the
Or make
beginning of this
waves on the other side.
in the beginning of this whole thing, you know, the determination was made that I was in violation before they were even aware of the
What
previous Board of Zoning Appeals decision.
Right.
At which point they could have just said, oh, okay, yeah, we're not going to argue between horses and cows. That doesn't make any sense to have that argument. But instead, I think because, you know, because the zoning administrator said, no, citizen, you cannot do that. I think because of his ego, which I would say is fragile, that he couldn't back off of it. He had to keep pushing. I am powerful. And
now, I was wondering if you thought maybe there was something even more sinister going on, since there were lawyers from the state level at your trial. That is there an initiative to allow Americans to not grow food for themselves in the state of Virginia?
Can we?
Do you think?
Well, I think the reason all those lawyers were in the courtroom was because when I made my appeal to the circuit court on the civil side, I brought up constitutional issues and also shot holes in their ordinances and their authorities, and that they wanted to protect that needs to be protected. Because basically, I think, and I might be overstating it, but I think that my case basically shows, you know, and I'm not saying corruption, that they're corrupt in a nefarious way, but it just shows the corruption of their assumption of power.
Right.
They don't have a lot of powers that they think they do, or that they would like to. These ordinances are not voted on individually by the Virginia legislature. The Virginia legislature at some point said, hey, we give you the authority to make ordinances, but the ordinances have to directly pertain to the health, safety, and welfare of the public.
Correct.
So it's a really shoddy thing, because it's not a law. It's a statement. You know, it's a statement. So I think maybe that's why they showed up. But as far as the what appears to be a concerted effort to stop people from having healthy food, I can't see that as a movement of individuals, at least not small individuals. I think that movement is being perpetrated to stop people from having healthy food by the large corporations, the chemical fertilizer companies, the packaging companies, the big food companies, that they have financial incentive to keep people in their food system. As far as something being nefarious on a spiritual side, I don't think that there's people sitting, creepy people sitting at a table saying, how are we going to make people unhealthy? I don't think that they're doing that, but I do think that they're orchestrated through darkness, and they're just doing their part unknowingly in order to keep us away from really healthy food. So, it's a really complex thing to even try to think about, because I don't want to look at other human beings and think that they're trying to feed my children things that aren't bad for them. I don't want to look at people and think that. However, I can look all around me and see what the food is doing to people. I can look at my children who are not under the influences of the rest of the children in society. And people come up to me when my family is out on a regular basis. They come up to us and they say, wow, your children are so beautiful. Your children are so well behaved. Strangers come up to us all the time. And all I can think is, well, my children don't eat the food that the rest of society eats. My children do not partake in the media that the rest of society does. And my children are not around the rest of society's children. My children are around like-minded, parents that I know. That's who my children are around. So anyway, just when you have these children that eat very clean and their minds are protected, and then you see other people in society, it's like there's some difference. I don't want to think that the difference is these other children are basically being poisoned.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. We're all being poisoned, whether
That's
it's
exactly
the
what's
air or
happening.
the water or the food. Oh.
Yeah. Well,
so now what can people do if they're local and they're listening to this, what can people do to help you with your case, which is still ongoing, as I understand to be saying?
Yeah.
How can people help?
Well, this is bigger than just my case. But what needs to happen to help me, and what needs to happen to help all of us, is all of us need to band together.
Mountain Patriots. That's where it started.
These people, whether it be the county attorney or the zoning administrator or our elected officials, if it's the circuit court clerk, that person is elected as a constitutional office. All of those people, if they understood that there is a large group of people, we will vote them out and we will push them out of our county. You won't be welcome here. If you are violating our rights, then you're going to go to the grocery store and people are going to look at you and they're not going to like you. You're not going to like it and you're going to leave. So what needs to happen is people have to come together and say, we're not going to take this anymore. Right. And that's all it takes. We might want to think, oh, we got to get these different people elected and then they're going to go and they're going to rewrite the laws and all of this stuff. That's not that's a good thing to work towards. But basically, if we, the people, come together, all that other stuff works itself out pretty fast because
so how can people come together to help you with this?
Conference.
Well, yeah, it's just
we are having a conference. That is true. Yes, October 14th. There will be an amazing informational
learn
time
what's
at the
going on.
Club.
Educate yourself. Show up for other people, which is what we all do. And Robert had a situation. 13 of us went in there and sat there and scratched our heads and thought, why would they do that? I'm surprised Robert didn't. I think he did say my I hate to say it like this, but my cow now identifies as a horse. It seems to be okay
It
for
does.
one side, but it's not okay
It
for the
does.
other.
Right,
Seriously, it might sound
right.
funny, but that's true. There's two
Hmm.
sets of
No,
rules.
That's
yeah,
exactly right.
the horse is unable, and please do not misspecies my livestock animal, but so the horse isn't able to speak. But so one day I went into the pasture with what I thought was a cow, and I was scratching her head, and I just got down next to her mouth, and she went nay, and I was like, oh, it's a horse. So now surely the local government is going to leave me alone now that you know we've established that it's a horse. But your question was, how can people help me? I would say that the way that people can help me is by helping themselves to understand what is going on in society, in our governments, with our media, with our food. If people could understand what was going on, I wouldn't have to ask them for help.
Right.
Just like when I look at things that are going on in the county, I was not involved in anything. I went to the polls when I saw Dana that day in November about a year ago. I went to the polls. I didn't even know that there was a vote, but I said, well, I'm going to go and I'm going to vote for whoever the Republican was. But I was so uninformed, I didn't even know there was a vote, let alone who I was voting for. I had to get that information from somebody else. Now I'm going through all of the documentation that our local county provides as to what they're voting on, all of these different things. And now when I see somebody with a zoning issue, I seek them out. I get their address from the paperwork,
Yes.
and I go to their place of business or knock on their door and say, hey, the government is messing with me too.
Right.
So if people understood what was going on, I wouldn't have to ask them for anything because they'd be looking for something to do to have a positive impact. So we just need people to learn to learn about what's going on. And I think the rest of the problems can work themselves out as long as we wake people up.
And that really is what Mountain Patriots and Wake Up Winchester is all about, is
Absolutely.
bringing the people together and educating them on the things that are going on in their local government and how they can get involved to take the power back. Because it's been a long time that the people in office have listened to what the people actually want.
We've taken that for
It's it's
granted.
it,
We've taken that for
it's
granted. We
our
just didn't pay attention.
it's our power. We
Yes.
let them take it, and
Yep.
now we have to fight. We wouldn't have had to have fought so hard if we were engaged before,
Right.
but
Right.
now we have to fight to take it back.
That's
Right.
right.
But in numbers, it'll just happen by itself because they'll just know they can't do that to us.
Right. It reminds me of the movie Animal House when they wreck the car and he says, and he turns around and he says, my brother's car. He goes, hey, you effed up. You trusted us. I mean, and that's about where we are right now. We trust them. We listen to the stories. We trust them. And somebody gets in there and they go, wow, I can't go against all of the politicians in the school board and everything else, but I can go against the parents because they won't pay attention. Or I'll go against the citizens because they're not going to pay attention. We can just slap them back and they'll just shut up and obey. We're past that point with our children, with our health, with our farms, with our taxes. We're past that point.
Yep.
We're
That's
past that point.
right.
And that's
Yeah.
what Mountain Patriots is about. Anybody that it doesn't make any difference whether you're on the left or the right or in between. It's your rights. It's what you work for. It's what you spend time trying to earn, and then somebody wants to slap you back and say, and there's a lot of things that we agree, common sense, that you shouldn't do. I'm not going to have a cow in the middle of the city, on my front lawn. But when you're out in the middle of nowhere, common sense would say, don't have it in the city, but you can have it out here in the county. And it just, when you start to peel back the layers, you really have to peel back the layers to figure out what's going on. And then when you really get to it, you find out you really have to follow the money. Who's getting what, who's getting where, and why. Okay. Are they getting something out of it, or are they afraid to do something for the people?
Yes. Now, Dana is listening to this and they want to get involved. How can they contact you? How can they
Well,
come on October 14th?
well, it's pretty easy. All you have to do is go to, you Google it, or I hate to use the word Google. We use Brave and we use DuckDuckGo, which is kind of, but go to wakeupwinchester.com. Tickets are inexpensive. We spent all the money already. We're just looking for people that'll pitch in and try to help it. It is a community effort, and if somebody doesn't have a couple dollars to throw in, we don't care. We don't care. We want to make sure that people have the access to be able to hear stories like Robert's, to be able to hear about trafficking, be able to hear about their government, to be able to hear about what's going on in their local community and nationwide. But any help people can give us would be fantastic. There'll be food, there'll be music, and there'll be local people as well as outside people from across the whole state that are willing to spend 4 or 5 hours to drive here because they believe like we do. It's of the people, by the people, for the people, and we are greater than they are by about 99%. So there's no reason to be afraid to show up to something like this. So go to wakeupwinchester.com.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, thank you both so much for being here. This has been another episode of In the Know, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Amy, thank you so much. Robert, thank you, my friend. And we will see you all shortly at Wake Up Winchester.
That's all right.